Hey everyone, I just wanted to share with you a record of me building a 4x12 guitar cab in case you ever decide to undertake such a project yourself. This is essentially a Marshall clone. It's got the same dimensions as a Marshall 1960B 4x12 cabinet. And very professionally, I don't have a table saw, so I'm doing the whole thing with a skill saw. And it was a little bit of a challenge to get some very precise cuts, but I managed to do it in the end. Okay, so I'm using 1/2-inch plywood, which is a little bit of an overkill. Most of the time you will find cabinet makers use 3/8, I believe, is the standard. But I'm using 1/2-inch, a little bit beefier, a little bit stronger. It feels very solid. And I'm creating all the pieces. That's the front panel. And here what I'm doing is I'm just testing, because I want to make sure I get the spacing for the cups on top of the cabinet in precisely the right place. Now, I know the dimensions, I know the measurements for it, but I'm just testing it to make sure that with an actual Marshall cab, it does fit precisely. So that's what I'm doing here. And the 1960B cabinet is a little bit easier to build than the 1960A because it doesn't have the slanted front panel. So that's a big help. But here's the final measurements, and here's the tools I'm using to create the holes there for the cups that will eventually go in there. That's obviously the top panel for the cabinet. There's the cups, so everything matches up precisely. So it's always good to test your handiwork before you build it into a cabinet and discover in the end that it doesn't fit. So here's the assembly. I'm using all wood screws, no nails, so that the thing is very firmly adhered together. There's all the pieces assembled, and I did use some glue. The 1960B cabinet does have an angled front panel. The front panel is pointing upwards ever so slightly. There's a very slight angle there. So you do have an angled piece, as you can see, that goes in there to do that. Now, the first flaw in my project was that the wood that I used, it was very slightly warped. So I've had to reverse a couple of pieces so that the pieces are not bowed inwards. And as a result, the exterior sides have some knot holes in them, and I'm trying to fill in the knot holes with wood glue. And here I'm doing the sanding. I found that 40 grit sandpaper is the magic weapon for being able to do this. It removes a ton of material to get those nice rounded corners on the top and on the front very easily. It is a dream to use, the 40 grit sandpaper. And here's the front panel. I'm applying 1 coat of primer and then 4 coats of black high gloss paint to it. Now, that's a bit of a controversial decision. A lot of people don't like the high glossy paint. A lot of people like a matte paint for this application, but I like the high gloss, so that's what I used. As you can see, I put 1 coat of black paint on and then put on the T-nuts that allow you to adhere the speakers. Now, what I tried to do is I wanted to paint the T-nuts, so I applied a very little bit of primer to the metal T-nuts, and then continued applying coats of the glossy black paint over top. So in the end, you got 4 coats of the black paint. And here, as you can see, the T-nuts are painted black. I think it worked out okay. But painting took a long time because after each coat, you got to wait like a day or whatever it is. I'm continuing to fill in those knot holes because I want a nice flat surface for the Tolex to be adhered to. And I created this place to work with the Tolex and apply it, but where I live, it gets very cold at the time of year that I was doing this, so I had to bring the whole operation inside because the contact cement won't adhere and work properly in cold temperatures. So I'm having to do all of this in a bathroom. That's where I'm doing the Tolex work. Now, I did get the particular type of Tolex. It's the elephant skin black thick type of Tolex that Marshall uses, so it looks pretty much the same. I'd say almost identical to the actual Marshall products. And as you can see, I'm using the contact cement to apply the Tolex. The technique that I use, that I've learned, I learned this on the prototype that I built before this, and then on this, the actual project, was the best way to do it, in my opinion, was to coat both surfaces. So you coat the wood with a film of contact cement, and then you coat the Tolex with a film of contact cement, but don't slather it on. It shouldn't be dripping with contact cement. It should be just a thin film. And then before you glue the two surfaces together, you wait half an hour to 40 minutes so that the contact cement is partially cured. It's still sticky, but it's not liquid anymore. And when you do this, you get a perfect operation. It's easy to do. You get a great result. And as you can see so far, for someone who this is their second time in their life doing Tolex, I believe I'm getting a pretty decent result. It was a bit time consuming. I think the whole thing took about 2 to 3 days to just do the Tolex. So that's the time scales involved. But I'm happy with the result. The corners I'm not too concerned about because I will be applying plastic corner protectors over top, so you won't be able to see the exterior corners very, very easily. A lot of tools involved. I used a box cutter, I used scissors, but I also used a hand roller, and I found the hand roller is critical to being able to get a good result. You got to roll out all the air bubbles, and I did a pretty good job on the cabinet, but on the rear panel, there were still a couple of little bubbles I didn't manage to fully get out. I didn't see them at the time, so that was the reason. But in the future, that will not be an issue. So this is how the Tolex turned out, now that I've cut out the holes for the handles and the cups and the rear panel. You can see what it looks like. Now I'm going back into the garage to apply the white Marshall piping, and this is how I did it. I boiled some water, put it in a bowl, and soaked the piping in it so it's very soft, and then hung the piping, as you can see, from the ceiling with a weight on the bottom, so that as it cools, it becomes very, very straight. And then when you staple it into place, you get a great result. The piping is perfectly straight. It's not undulating like it was on my prototype, and it looked terrible. So that's the piping applied. And the next step, I believe, is to fasten the front panel into the cabinet. And in order to do that, you've got spacers and shims all the way around to center it. Now, I decided to apply 4 dissimilar speakers. You would never do this, but this was for a special application where it's connected to a switcher, and the switcher can turn each of the 4 speakers on or off manually. So this was done intentionally to test several speakers. I've got 2 cabinets like this. So I used a standard Creamback by Celestion, and I also used a second Celestion speaker that was a Greenback 20, not the Greenback 25, which is the standard Greenback. This was a Heritage Greenback. It's only 20 watts, and it's supposedly made to emulate the original Greenbacks that came out in the early 60s. So if you really want a classic rock sound, that's what it does. The other 2 speakers are an Eminence Governor, which is their version of the Greenback, a Greenback 25, and I found it sounds very similar. And the Eminence Swamp Thing, which I was less happy about, but it's a matter of taste. I applied the central column to the cabinet and fastened it very solidly. There's like a 4.5-inch giant wood screw that goes down the middle, holding it on. Here are the rivets for the cups and the corner protectors. You have to drill a pilot hole with the drill first, and then you hammer the rivets in. And I put a little bit of spray foam under the cups just for some added structural support so they can carry a lot of weight without breaking. Here are the wheels that I put on the bottom. They're a different style from the standard Marshall cabinet. They don't go right through the bottom plate. They're just sort of surface mounted. And I'm applying the 4 bolts that hold on the speakers. So each speaker has 4 bolts that go into the T-nuts. Now, what I found is that if you're using a drill press, this should be no problem. But if you're using a hand drill like I was, it's very tricky because it's very easy to drill those holes on a slight angle. And if you do, you can have all kinds of problems getting your speakers to line up, their holes to line up with where the bolts are. Here's this crazy, complex, overcomplicated wiring scheme I have so you can switch the speakers in and out, and I'm using some barrettes to do that, just what I'm familiar with. I know nobody would wire a cabinet like this, but this was just a custom project for what we're doing here at the studio. And then some touch-ups. I apply the Marshall nameplate and just had to touch up some of the ink. Now, as you can see, you've got the ends of the bolts that hold on the speakers. They're sticking out through the front panel of the cabinet. And that looks bad, and it's also kind of a safety thing because you can really scratch your hand because they're just sticking out into the air. So what I did is I applied some rubber pieces that go over top of the bolt ends. As you can see right there, I'm applying them. It looks better, and it's a little bit safer. Now, it was a conscious decision not to put grill cloth because this cabinet is not being used to gig. It's not going on tour. It's mainly just for in the studio. And it involves a lot of miking of speakers and different parts of speakers and being able to tell very precisely where your mics are pointing. So just for the ease of use, I intentionally did not put on a grill cloth because it didn't serve our purpose there. If you were touring with this, you would apply grill cloth, and then the speaker cones themselves have a little bit of protection. I applied a big Marshall logo in the middle, and also as well as the Marshall nameplate and Eminence nameplate. Kind of a contradiction to have both of them on there, but they give you the nameplate when you buy the speakers, so I just put it on the front there. So you've got 2 Eminence speakers and 2 Celestion speakers in there and a custom switcher. Here's the finished product after it's been all cleaned up and everything. I'm quite happy with the result. Looks very similar to an authentic Marshall cabinet. Slightly heavier, but more solid. These are the 2 of them. The one on the right is a actual Marshall. The one on the left is the Marshall clone I just built. And here's the end result. And I'm quite happy with it. So hopefully this is inspiration for people. Thank you for watching. You guys are awesome.